What's going on, guys? So in this video, we're going to be discussing a fragrance that I haven't worn some time. I wore it as my scent of the day today, and it kind of sparked the idea of me realizing I've never done a full individual review on this fragrance, and I felt, why not? It's a very underrated, somewhat blue fragrance, very mass appealing, that actually has a lot going on for it, and not too many people talk about. Of course, we are talking about Salvatore Ferragamo Uomo. This is the Urban Feel Flanker. Let's discuss it. Stay tuned. So moving into this scent, when you spray this one at first, it's very intriguing. It's a juicy blast of some tart type of bergamot. Very bright. The ozonic notes here are almost like an aldehydic vibe. It adds a brightness to it. Very aromatic, very bright, but still very ambery, warm, and smoky. The incense that's in the base here, I've said on many occasions, incense, olibanum, any form of incense really, or smoky notes of any kind, gaiac wood because it's a smokier wood, they all pop on my skin. Smoky nuances always come across very strongly, and I get plenty of incense early on with this fragrance. And the ambroxan here with the labdanum kind of gives an ambery feel because there's no amber in the fragrance, but ambroxan can come off ambery, and labdanum can usually come off either leathery or ambery. So I'm guessing it's kind of a combination of both that give me this warm amber feel. It's very warming. And then as it starts to settle in, that bergamot and ozonic notes kind of kill off. I never really get a distinctive coffee smell. Coffee's kind of the signature note for this line. I never really get a heavy coffee smell, but I do get a little bit of a light, salty, aquatic feel, even though it still stays pretty warm. I'm pretty confident that's the driftwood because that's kind of a salty, aquatic, woody note. It is very woody. I get woods the whole way through. Once the driftwood and cedar kind of rear their head, I kind of get them the rest of the way through. The cumin doesn't come across too heavily, though I'm sure it contributes to that warm and almost spicy like feel that I do get from it. And then once it settles in, it's pretty much that warm amber and woody smell with a little bit of a muskiness. Like the, it kind of has a slightly musky type of dry down, even though there's no musky notes in the breakdown. This is actually quite lovely. I know there have been people that have compared it to Fragrance One Office for Men, and admittedly, in the opening blast, I do get a resemblance in the top, the very top, but as it starts to settle in, they become completely different fragrances. That, like I said, that opening blast, I can see why people compare it, but after a few minutes, like I said, it starts to change. Office for Men goes one way, Urban Feel goes another, and they're their own fragrances. So if you're looking for a great Office for Men alternative, this does a similar job and has a similar top note, but is not the same fragrance as a whole. This doesn't perform on the level of that, and this has just totally different nuances once you get away from the opening. And it's beautiful. It's a very lovely fragrance. It's very underrated, affordable, sub $50 price point, usually in the $40 range. You can get one of these 100 milliliter bottles. I haven't seen them at the rack stores in a very long time, but this is some really good stuff. It doesn't smell too synthetic. It's very crowd pleasing without smelling like every crowd pleasing fragrance. It does take a lot of facets from a lot of great mass appealing blue fragrances and kind of makes its own blend. This is really good stuff. that, shame on me, I haven't worn much lately, and reaching for it today really made me want to talk about it. Now let's discuss performance. So even though this is an ambroxan-based fragrance, it's not a crazy beast. It is slightly above average. I will say I tend to get in the 5 to 7 hour range in longevity, more in the 6 to 7 hour range, but I think 5 to 7 hour range is what most people can expect from this, as long as you don't have very dry skin and tend to get weaker performance from most fragrances. Your mileage will vary in those situations, but if you're the type that gets average performance most of the time, that's probably what you'll get here. Very loud at first, though. This is a loud fragrance. It does pop. It's very bright in the opening. The first hour of this fragrance is pretty heavy. Not some super beast by any means, but very noticeable and can be overwhelming if sprayed on the heavy side, for sure. With this one today, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did 9 sprays, so I was on the heavy side today. I doubled up on both sides of my neck behind my ears, one directly behind the neck, 2 on my bare chest, and 1 on each forearm. So I've had quite a nice sillage going, and like I said, the first hour, pretty heavy. Doesn't overwhelm me in the first hour, but I'm sure if you start dialing up in the 15 to 20 sprays, it can be overwhelming for even you as the wearer. But definitely has a nice little bubble. I did actually get a compliment today. We went to the Walmart neighborhood market, and the cashier did say, "Ooh, someone smells nice." And we narrowed it down to it was me. My wife was wearing YSL Libre, and she had a pretty good sillage going too. We had to kind of figure it out. Turns out she was talking about me, so yay for me. Sillage on it, speaking of, is on the moderate to mild side. Again, not super weak, but a little bit below average. Because mild, I would consider a weak sillage, a weaker trail. And this has a little bit better than a weaker trail without being really strong, because a relatively strong trail is going to fall into that moderate rating for my rating system in particular. So I say it falls somewhere in between at the moderate / mild range. So performance is kind of above average across the board. Not a beast by any means, but definitely not a weak fragrance. So you definitely get your money's worth out of this. It kind of falls into the sweet spot for attention getting without being too much. So most people can appreciate that. So the performance on this, I think, is great across the board. Final thoughts on Urban Feel in the Uomo line from Salvatore Ferragamo is I think this is underrated, including from me, for example, because I've had this for a couple of years and I have not been wearing it. It's been a long time since I've wore this fragrance. This is the downside to having so many fragrances, but this is staying true to what I said at the beginning of the year. I was going to be reaching back in my collection to spend more time with great fragrances that I own that I just haven't been wearing, and this is definitely one of those. This can be on the poster for reaching back for great fragrances that I've been having that don't get enough love. This is definitely one that deserves more love. This is a very good fragrance, bordering into a great fragrance territory. That's why I'm saying this one is a 7.5 out of 10 overall. This is a very good fragrance. Part of me wanted to give it an 8 to make it, label it as a great fragrance, but I feel like based on the scent profile, if it was a little bit stronger, that would suit it and crack it into that 8 range. But by no means is this a weak fragrance. Like I said, it kind of falls into the sweet spot in my wheelhouse for what I like most days. Now, days when I want to show out and have something really push and reach out and grab people, this doesn't fall into it because I have stronger fragrances than this. Obviously, I have much weaker fragrances than this as well. But this is a very good fragrance that more people should give a try. I do think it's blind buy safe if you like ambroxan or ambery type of fragrances. If you're fond of heavy bergamot openings, you'll like this because it's a very, very juicy and tart blast of bergamot juice is what it smells like at the top. It's a solid fragrance overall. Well, that's my thoughts and feelings on Uomo Urban Feel from Salvatore Ferragamo. And until next time, do me a real quick favor. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. I do appreciate all the feedback, and I love hearing from you guys. How many of you have this fragrance or have tried it, and what do you think about it? Or have you never tried it, and something you heard here today in this video maybe sparked your interest to where you feel like you need to get your nose on it? Because it is solid. This is, under the radar type of stuff. Doesn't get a lot of love. The whole line doesn't get that much love. Uomo's signature of the line gets the most, then the original Uomo. But this and Casual Life, they don't get enough shine, and they're the two great fresher fragrances of the line. Uomo Casual Life, beautiful, creamy, musky, coffee-based fragrance. You definitely smell a lot more coffee in that one than you do here. And this is kind of the blue fragrance of the bunch, hence the reason they painted the bottle blue in the first place. And until next time, I will say, if you get your hands on Uomo Urban Feel from Ferragamo and you give it a spray now, you might end up thanking me later. Have a good one, guys.